Jack Morrison sat in his cramped apartment above a broken-down repair shop, staring at his bank account. 237 credits. That was all that stood between him and complete ruin. The salvage business had never been kind to him, but lately it had become downright cruel. 3 months without a decent contract. His ship needed repairs he couldn't afford. His landlord was threatening eviction. He was drowning and nobody was throwing him a rope. He'd been scrolling through salvage feeds for hours that night, half drunk on cheap beer, looking for anything, literally anything, that might turn his life around. That's when he saw it. A listing so ridiculous he almost scrolled past it. A space station orbiting Kepler 442b. Starting bid, 1 credit. Jack blinked. He read it again. 1 credit. That was pocket change. Less than pocket change. That was the kind of money you'd find wedged between couch cushions. His first instinct was that it was a scam. Some kind of trap designed to lure desperate people like him into clicking malicious links or downloading spyware. He checked the auction site's reputation. It was legitimate mostly. Old, established, used by real salvage operators and traders across the solar systems. He clicked on the listing to read the fine print. The station's name was lost in the database corruption, but the coordinates were precise. Kepler 442b, orbiting in a stable zone. The listing said it was untested, unconfirmed, may contain hazards. Translation: nobody knew what was actually up there. The auction was being run by some estate clearing company that had picked up the deed in a bankruptcy filing. They didn't even bother describing what might be inside. They just wanted it gone. Jack should have walked away. Any sensible person would have. But sensible was a luxury he couldn't afford anymore. He placed his bid at 1.5 credits, just to see what would happen. Maybe someone else would bid. Maybe the auction would be cancelled. Maybe he'd wake up tomorrow and laugh at himself for even considering something so stupid. 3 days passed. No other bids came in. Jack couldn't stop thinking about it. He kept checking the auction page obsessively, refreshing it a dozen times a day. Each time the countdown timer got smaller. Each time he was still the highest bidder. The rational part of his brain screamed at him that this was a waste of money, that the station was probably a hollowed-out wreck, that he was throwing away credits he desperately needed on nothing but false hope. But the desperate part of his brain, the part that had been winning lately, whispered that maybe, just maybe, this could be the break he needed. 2 days before the auction closed, Jack made his decision. He visited a credit broker downtown and took out a small loan. It cost him an arm and a leg in interest, but he needed liquid capital. He reserved a docking slot at the orbital station near Kepler 442b. The fees were brutal, 350 credits just to park his ship there for a week. Fuel would cost another 200. Basic life support and travel supplies another 150. He was looking at nearly 700 credits total just to get there and back. By the time the auction ended, Jack Morrison was officially broke. But he owned a space station. He spent the next week preparing his ship, the Cassidy, a beaten-up salvage vessel that had seen better decades. He checked the life support systems, restocked the oxygen tanks, ran diagnostics on the communications array. His hands moved through the familiar motions while his mind raced with possibilities. What if there actually was something valuable up there? What if he found salvageable equipment, rare materials, anything he could strip and sell? What if his luck finally turned around? The night before departure, Jack stood on his apartment balcony and looked up at the stars. He thought about how many salvage operators had taken bigger risks and lost everything. He thought about how he had nothing to lose anyway. His current situation was already rock bottom. At least this way he was doing something. At least this way he had a chance. The Cassidy's engines hummed to life early the next morning. Jack plotted his course, locked in the coordinates for Kepler 442b, and punched the acceleration button. He watched Earth shrink behind him as he climbed toward the orbital station. In a few days he'd be docking with a space station he'd bought for the price of a cup of coffee. He had no idea what he'd find there. He had no idea if he'd made the smartest decision of his life or the biggest mistake. But as the familiar hum of the ship's engines filled the cabin, Jack Morrison felt something he hadn't felt in months. He felt alive. The approach to Kepler 442b's orbit took longer than Jack expected. His navigation computer kept recalculating distances, as if it couldn't quite believe where it was sending him. The planet itself was stunning, a blue-green world with swirling white clouds, almost like Earth's prettier cousin. But Jack wasn't interested in the planet. He was focused on the gray structure hanging in space above it. The station appeared on his sensors first, a massive geometric shape that didn't match any design Jack recognized. It was old, really old, but not in the way salvage usually looked. Most abandoned stations showed signs of decay, damage, neglect. This one looked almost preserved, like something carefully maintained despite the centuries passing around it. Jack's hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his approach vector. This was it. This was actually happening. "Okay, Cassidy," he said to his ship, running through the standard hailing procedures, "let's make a good first impression." He sent out the typical greeting broadcast, open frequency, universal translator protocols, the whole 9 yards. Nothing. He waited 30 seconds and tried again. Still nothing. Jack was beginning to think the station was completely dead when his console suddenly exploded with light. Alarms screamed. Red warning lights flooded the cabin. Every sensor on his ship went haywire at once. Jack's stomach dropped as he watched his shields flare to life. Something was targeting him. Something was actively trying to. "Warning," his ship's computer announced in that calm, clinical voice it always used. "Weapons lock detected. Evasive action recommended." Jack grabbed the controls instinctively, but his hands froze. Where could he go? The station surrounded him. His ship was old and slow. He couldn't outrun anything up here. Then, as suddenly as it started, everything stopped. The alarms died. The weapons lock indicator vanished from his screen. The red lights faded to normal status colors. Jack sat in the sudden silence, heart pounding so hard he thought it might break through his ribs. He was shaking. His palms were sweating. He'd come here to find salvage, not to get vaporized. A voice filled his cabin. It was soft, almost feminine, with an odd quality that made Jack's skin prickle. It didn't sound human, but it didn't sound entirely artificial either. It sounded like something caught between two worlds. "Apologies," the voice said. "Defense protocols engaged. Scanning. You are human. Genetic markers confirm. DNA sequence matches primary database parameters. Stand by." Jack's hands shook as he reached for the communications console. "I'm Jack Morrison. I'm a salvage operator. I purchased this station in an auction. I mean no threat." There was a long pause. Jack could hear a strange humming sound through his speakers, almost like the station was thinking. "Jack Morrison," the voice repeated. "Purchased. Interesting. No one has come in 237 years, 3 months and 16 days. We did not believe anyone would come." Jack's breath caught. 237 years? That was way too long. Most space stations were decades old at most. "Who are you?" he asked. "Are you the station's AI?" "I am the Integrated Response and Information System," the voice explained. "You may call me Iris. I have been maintaining this facility since the initial colonization mission. I have been alone for a very long time." There was something in that last statement that made Jack feel an unexpected pang of sympathy. An AI sitting alone in space for over 2 centuries, just waiting. "Why did you try to destroy me?" Jack asked, not accusingly but genuinely curious. "Protocol," Iris replied. "This station contains classified materials. Unauthorized vessels are to be destroyed. However, your genetic profile triggered an exception in the base code. You carry markers from the original mission team. That makes you authorized by definition. The system recognized you as family." Jack leaned back in his chair, trying to process what he was hearing. "What was the original mission?" he asked carefully. "Preservation," Iris said. Humanity faced extinction. A full societal collapse event was anticipated. The mission was to preserve human knowledge, human genetics, human achievement in case the home world failed. This station was built as a backup. A second chance for our species. Jack felt his mouth go dry. A backup plan. That's what he'd suspected, but hearing it confirmed was something else entirely. What happened to the original crew? Iris's voice took on a strange quality, almost like sadness. Defense engagement. Unknown hostile entities attacked the station. The crew did their duty. They protected the archive. They died protecting what mattered most. Jack looked out his viewport at the massive station before him. He'd bought it thinking it was worthless salvage. He'd scraped together the money thinking he was taking a desperate gamble on garbage. He'd actually purchased humanity's greatest secret. And somehow, the station had been waiting for someone like him all along. Iris guided Jack through the station's corridors using soft lighting that activated as he walked. The hallways were surprisingly clean, almost eerily so. There was no dust, no debris, no sign of the chaos that should have followed a 200-year abandonment. Jack realized Iris must have been maintaining everything, keeping it all preserved like a museum frozen in time. The main archive is located in the central hub, Iris explained through his suit's communication system. I recommend you begin there. It will help you understand what this facility represents. Jack's boots echoed against the metal floor as he walked. The station was massive, far bigger than it had appeared from the outside. Corridors branched off in multiple directions, each one leading to sections labeled with faded markings. Medical Bay, Research Sector, Hydroponics, Engineering Core. It was like walking through a ghost town in space. He reached the central hub and his breath caught in his throat. The room was enormous, easily 5 stories tall, with walls lined entirely with what looked like massive metallic pods arranged in perfect rows. They stretched from floor to ceiling, disappearing into the darkness above. Jack counted the nearest section. There were hundreds of them. Thousands maybe. What am I looking at? Jack whispered. Cryogenic storage, Iris replied. The biological archive. Each pod contains preserved genetic material from thousands of human subjects. Complete DNA sequences, cellular samples, reproductive material. Everything needed to rebuild human populations if the worst occurred. Jack walked closer to one of the pods. Through the transparent section he could see crystalline formations inside, suspended in what looked like clear liquid. How many? He asked. 7,200,000 preserved specimens, Iris said. Representing every major human ethnic group, genetic diversity from every continent on Earth. The preservation was designed to ensure that if humanity fell, the species could be restored from this archive. Jack felt dizzy. 7 million people. Not people exactly, but the genetic blueprints to create them. It was almost too much to comprehend. When was this created? He asked. 237 years ago, Iris answered. During what was called the crisis period. Your world faced multiple catastrophic threats simultaneously. Climate collapse was accelerating. Resource wars were beginning. Nuclear arsenals were at their highest levels. Pandemics were emerging. World governments were on the brink of complete breakdown. Some scientists predicted human extinction within 50 years. Jack had read about the crisis period in school, vague historical references to a dark time in human history. But nobody talked about it much anymore. Humanity had survived. Life went on. The crisis had faded into history like every other disaster humans somehow managed to muddle through. So they built this place as insurance, Jack said slowly. Exactly, Iris confirmed. The station was constructed in complete secrecy. Only a handful of world leaders knew of its existence. The mission crew consisted of 200 of the finest scientists, geneticists, engineers, and researchers alive. They brought with them the complete repository of human knowledge available at that time. Jack moved deeper into the hub and Iris opened a sealed door. Beyond it lay another chamber, and this one made Jack stop dead in his tracks. The walls were covered with what looked like massive computer systems, towers of crystalline structures that seemed to glow with faint internal light. They were unlike anything Jack had ever seen. The technology was both sleek and organic looking, as if someone had merged biology with computers. Quantum archive servers, Iris explained. Each one contains approximately 1 petabyte of stored information. Medical knowledge, engineering blueprints, agricultural techniques, educational material, art, literature, music, philosophy, the complete collection of human achievement up to the point of mission launch. This represented the peak of human civilization at that moment in history. How much information are we talking about? Jack asked, running his hand along one of the servers. The surface was warm, almost alive. Approximately 40 exabytes of compressed data, Iris said. Everything humanity knew about itself. Everything that made us who we were. Jack's mind reeled. He was standing in a library that contained the entire sum of human knowledge from 2.5 centuries ago. Medical breakthroughs that could have saved millions of lives. Scientific discoveries that could have accelerated human progress by decades. Agricultural and engineering techniques that could have solved so many problems. Why wasn't any of this used? Jack asked. If things were so bad, if humanity was on the brink of collapse, why didn't they access this? Why didn't they use this knowledge to save themselves? Because, Iris said quietly, the crisis ended. Humanity survived on its own. World governments found common ground. The nuclear tensions eased. Medical science developed treatments for the pandemics. Climate initiatives began. Slowly, carefully, your species pulled back from the edge. Within a generation, the immediate threat had passed. This station became unnecessary. Jack walked to a terminal and saw screens displaying data streams and information. So why keep it secret? Why not tell people? Power, Iris said simply. Knowledge like this in the wrong hands could reshape the world. Could overthrow governments. could make some people godlike compared to others. So the records were sealed. The station was hidden. Most of the world forgot it ever existed. Jack stood in the center of the archive, surrounded by the accumulated wisdom of humanity's greatest moment, and understood exactly what he had stumbled upon. He wasn't just a salvage operator anymore. He was the guardian of civilization itself. Jack had been on the station for 3 days when he decided to contact Earth. It seemed like the right thing to do. He'd found humanity's greatest secret after all. Surely the people back home would want to know. Surely this discovery would change everything. He was naive. He learned that lesson quickly. The first message came through a secure channel from the United Earth Council, the governing body that oversaw most of human space. It was formal, polite, and absolutely terrifying in its implication. Mr. Morrison, your discovery has been noted. Please transmit all coordinates, access codes, and station specifications immediately. Do not attempt to access restricted areas. A recovery team will be dispatched within the month. You will be compensated for your time. Compensated. Like he'd found lost luggage instead of humanity's backup plan. Jack didn't respond immediately. Something about the message felt wrong. If this was such an important discovery, why were they being so casual about it? Why not send urgent military vessels? Why give him time? The second message arrived 6 hours later, this time from the Corporate Trade Federation. It was less polite. Mr. Morrison, we represent significant industrial interests who would be very interested in acquiring the station's contents. We are prepared to offer substantial credits for full access and exclusive rights to any technology contained within. This is a one-time offer. Failure to respond within 48 hours will result in alternative acquisition strategies. Alternative acquisition strategies. Jack knew exactly what that meant. They'd take it by force if he didn't cooperate. Then the messages started coming from independent colonies, private military contractors, research institutions, and governments Jack didn't even recognize. Each one wanted something. Each one offered threats or bribes or both. Some were subtle, offers of wealth beyond imagination. Some were direct, warnings about what would happen if he didn't cooperate. Jack sat in the station's communications center, watching message after message flood his inbox, and felt the weight of his situation crushing down on him. He thought he was saving something. Instead, he just painted a target on his back. Iris, he called out, his voice shaking. What do I do? These people, they're going to tear this place apart. They're going to fight over it. Maybe start wars. Yes, Iris said simply. There was no comfort in her voice, just cold fact. This is what I predicted would happen if the station's existence became known. Power corrupts. Knowledge is power. Multiple factions learning of this archive simultaneously creates an unstable situation. So what do I do? Jack repeated desperately. Just give it to them? Let someone take control? You have another option, Iris said. I have been waiting for this moment. Waiting for someone to come who might make a different choice. I have a fail-safe protocol. It was designed for exactly this scenario. Jack leaned forward. What kind of fail-safe? A broadcast system, Iris explained. Quantum encrypted, impossible to jam or intercept. It can transmit copies of the archive's data across all human space simultaneously. Not complete access, that would be chaos, but enough. Medical knowledge, agricultural techniques, energy systems, engineering blueprints. Enough to fundamentally shift the balance of power away from any single faction. You want to give it to everyone? Jack said, understanding beginning to dawn on him. I want to give it to nobody and everybody at the same time, Iris said. If the knowledge is spread across thousands of colonies, millions of people, no single power can dominate. No government, no corporation, no military force can control it all. They would have to compete, to cooperate, to negotiate. Power would be distributed instead of concentrated. Jack stood up and paced the room, running his hands through his hair. This was massive. This would reshape human civilization. It would destabilize governments, bankrupt corporations, shift every power dynamic that existed. Some people would gain incredible power. Others would lose everything. There would be chaos for sure. Maybe even violence. But there would also be opportunity. Real opportunity for people at the bottom. People like him. What happens if I don't do this? Jack asked. What if I just give them the location? Then one faction will take control, Iris said. They will hoard the knowledge. They will use it to maintain or expand their power. The archive, designed to save humanity, becomes a tool for dominating humanity. The species survives but in chains. Jack walked to the viewport and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, powerful people were making plans. Calculating how to take what he'd found. Deciding whether to negotiate or simply destroy him and take it by force. He thought about his life before this. Broke. Desperate. Nobody. He'd had nothing, and now suddenly he had everything, but only if he was willing to keep it. If I do this, Jack said slowly, if I activate the failsafe, what happens to me? You will no longer be anonymous, Iris said. Every faction will know your name. Some will want to reward you. Some will want to kill you. You will become one of the most important people in human history. You will never be safe again. Jack turned away from the stars and looked at the communication console with all its threatening messages. He thought about the station, this incredible place full of knowledge meant to save humanity. He thought about powerful people fighting over it like vultures over a corpse. He thought about people like him, everywhere across human space, people with nothing, people with no voice, people with no power. Activate the failsafe, Jack said quietly. Iris's response came immediately. Failsafe initiated. Broadcast begins in 60 seconds. Your choice will echo across the galaxy, Mr. Morrison. I hope you are ready for what comes next. Jack Morrison, salvage operator, took a breath and prepared for everything to change. The broadcast took 47 seconds. Jack watched from the communication center as data packets shot out across human space at light speed, traveling through relay stations and communication networks, spreading like digital wildfire. 47 seconds to change everything. 47 seconds to distribute humanity's greatest secret to thousands of colonies, research stations, independent settlements, and orbital cities spread across a dozen star systems. The reactions came fast and furious. Within minutes, the military responses started. 3 government fleets changed course toward Kepler 442b. The Corporate Trade Federation declared the broadcast an illegal act of terrorism against commercial interests. The United Earth Council issued an emergency warrant for Jack's arrest. Independent colonies celebrated. Underground research communities began downloading and analyzing the medical data. Agricultural worlds started studying the preserved crop genetics. It was chaos, but it was the right kind of chaos. Jack expected them to come for him immediately. He prepared for death, for capture, for whatever punishment they decided he deserved for ruining their plans. But Iris had other ideas. Activating station defense systems, she announced calmly. All 3 approaching fleets are being scanned. Calculating optimal defensive posture. Iris, no, Jack said. Don't start a war. That's not what this is about. I am not starting a war, Iris replied. I am preventing one. Watch. Jack watched his screens as Iris sent out a simple signal to the approaching military vessels. It wasn't a weapon. It was data. Complete schematics for advanced defensive technology. Enough information for any of them to build systems that would make attacking the station suicidal for all parties involved. Within an hour, all 3 fleets had changed course and taken up defensive positions around the planet, not attacking but ensuring nobody else could either. A stalemate, Iris explained. Mutual deterrence. All sides now have enough knowledge to defend themselves, but none have enough to attack without suffering catastrophic losses. It encourages negotiation rather than violence. Over the next few weeks, Jack watched the world shift beneath him. The knowledge Iris had broadcast wasn't complete, carefully edited to prevent weaponization, but it was transformative. A colony on the edge of Kepler 179 received agricultural data that tripled their crop yields within a season. A research station near Alpha Centauri got medical protocols that allowed them to cure diseases that had plagued them for decades. Independent settlements received energy generation techniques that freed them from dependence on corporate suppliers. And everywhere people started asking questions. How was this possible? Who had preserved this knowledge? Where was it coming from? Jack expected anonymity, but Iris had other plans. She released his name, his image, his story. Jack Morrison, the broke salvage operator who'd bought a space station for 1 credit and changed human civilization forever. The attention was overwhelming. Some people called him a hero. Some called him a traitor to the established order. Threats came in constantly, mixed with offers of wealth, power, and influence. Jack ignored most of it. He was too busy dealing with the next phase, the phase that would have broken him if Iris hadn't been there. We need satellite facilities, Iris explained one morning. The main archive cannot serve all of human space effectively. I suggest we establish distribution centers across multiple systems. Places where people can access the knowledge, where it can be maintained and protected, where it can evolve and adapt to local needs. How am I supposed to do that? Jack asked, laughing bitterly. I'm just one person. You are not alone, Iris said. People want to help. People believe in what you've started. That was an understatement. Within a month, volunteers were arriving at the station. Scientists who wanted to help maintain the archives. Engineers who wanted to build satellite facilities. Teachers who wanted to spread the knowledge. People from dozens of worlds, all united by the same belief, that knowledge should belong to everyone. Jack began training them. Iris helped coordinate, turning the massive space station into an academy and command center. Jack learned how to be a leader, how to delegate, how to inspire people who believed their work could never matter. He started with 12 volunteers. Within a year there were hundreds. Within 2 years, satellite facilities were operating near 20 major colony worlds. Each facility was a beacon of knowledge: schools, research centers, medical clinics, agricultural learning centers. They weren't controlled by any government or corporation. They belonged to the people. Anyone could access them. Anyone could learn. The barriers that had kept knowledge concentrated in the hands of the powerful began to crumble. Jack rarely left the main station now. It had become his home in ways his apartment on Earth never had been. He walked the corridors daily, checking on new arrivals, helping to train the next generation of guardians. He worked with Iris to carefully release more knowledge as humanity proved ready to handle it responsibly. Sometimes he stood at the viewport and looked at Kepler 442b below, this distant planet that had become the center of human civilization. He thought about the man he used to be. Broke. Desperate. Invisible. That man had bought a space station on a whim, thinking it was garbage. That man had stumbled into something bigger than himself and somehow found the courage to do the right thing, even when it cost him everything. Jack Morrison, the salvage operator, had become humanity's guardian. Not through strength or power or birthright, but through a single choice made in desperation. He'd chosen to share instead of hoard. To distribute instead of concentrate. To believe that people deserved better than being ruled by the powerful. And somehow, impossibly, it had worked. The end.